Merci beaucoup de votre présence à cette conférence de presse avec le président du Parlement.
Thank you very much indeed for being present here at this press conference with President Tajani and Mr. Verhofstadt, who's the coordinator for Brexit for the European Parliament, after the meeting that we've had earlier to adopt the draft resolution, amongst other things, that the Parliament is going to be adopting next week at the Strasbourg session. President, please.
Arrivati, bonsoir a tous, buenas tardes a todos, buonasera agli italiani, benvenuti a questa conferenza stampa.
Welcome to the press conference.
In the 60 years since the birth of the Union, we have overcome many challenges. However, this is the first time that a member state has decided to leave us. Although we fully respect the democratic will of the majority of the British people, but today is not a good day for Europe. As you know, today Prime Minister May has officially begun the Article 50 process. This is the starting point of a difficult and complex negotiations define the conditions of the United Kingdom's departure. During the Conference of the Presidents, we discussed the Parliament's initial position on the Brexit negotiations. We will have an open debate, and the resolution tabled by several groups will be voted on in the plenary next week. It will provide the Parliament's guidelines on the European Council negotiation mandate. The European Parliament's first priority is to safeguard the interests of citizens. For this, we must ensure an orderly withdrawal through successful negotiations conducted in good faith, with fair play, and in full transparency. This is in the interest of both the European Union and the UK. An orderly exit is an absolute requirement and the precondition for any potential future European Union-United Kingdom partnership. This is not negotiable. As the UK will continue to enjoy its rights as a member state, it will also have to fully respect its treaty obligation until the very last day of membership. And I want to thank Mrs. May for committing to this principle. But let me be clear, unilateral decision affecting the rights of EU citizens and any time before the UK's withdrawal in 2 years' time would be contrary to the treaties and therefore illegal. The European Parliament must defend citizens' rights. This is why we need an agreement based on continuity, reciprocity, and non-discrimination. Not reaching a deal on the right of citizens means not reaching a deal at all. In addition, the United Kingdom will have to honour its financial commitments. The UK will not be asked to pay for anything that they had not previously agreed to. It is evident that the no-deal scenario would be a catastrophe for all, but especially for the United Kingdom. The UK would be faced with tariffs, uncertainty for the car industry and financial services, increased food prices, air traffic disruptions, long lines of lorries in Dover, just to mention a few. This is not what we want. However, we stand ready. The absolute need to conclude a good deal also stems from our strong will to safeguard the achievement of the Good Friday Agreement and the peace process in Northern Ireland. I would also like to make clear that a social or fiscal race to the bottom would not lay the foundations for a sound relationship with the European Union after Brexit. The privilege of the Union membership comes with responsibilities, and these responsibilities mean guaranteeing the four freedoms. The four freedoms are the glue that binds it together. They are indivisible and not negotiable. It should be clear that to be a member cannot be the same thing as not being a member. Nevertheless, after the separation, we should work towards establishing a good partnership with the UK. But the UK is leaving the European Union, not Europe. We have the same heritage, the same culture, the same history, the same tradition. We have a common identity. Brexit is not the only challenge that we face. There is a growing feeling of anxiety. People are worried about their future, illegal immigration, terrorism. They would like a Europe that champions our interests and values around the world. We are strongly convinced that only by being united we can overcome these challenges. Close cooperation on defence, police, intelligence and judicial matters should continue with the UK, whether there is a deal or not. We are moving on. The Rome Declaration has given us a fresh start. I hope it will generate new momentum, taking Europe forward while bringing it closer to its citizens. In my role as its President, I will defend the Parliament's position in my meetings with the EU State of Aids, or states, or government, including Mrs. May, and with the European Commission. The Parliament will play a key role in deciding the outcome of the negotiations. As a representative of the only directly elected institution, I will keep lines of communication with members open and ensure that open, public debates will take place for the benefit of our citizens. And now I give the floor to the Conference of Presidents Brexit Coordinator, Mr. Guy Verhofstadt. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, let me say that at the end of this press conference, we're going to provide you the draft resolution that has been tabled for the plenary of next week, and that is supported at this moment by four groups, by the PPE, the S&D, the ALDE group, and the Greens. It's also possible that in the coming days, other groups will join the support for this resolution. And why this resolution? First of all, because it is an unprecedented and regrettable event that a member state is leaving the European Union. But you know that in the treaty is very clearly indicated that it is this House, the European Parliament, who has to approve the final deal, the final agreement. And what we want to do in this position, in this opinion, in this resolution, is already making very clear what the points are that have to be met in order to give the approval to this final agreement. So it's not an exercise in the air. It's to already very clearly indicating and stating what the points are that for the European Parliament need to be in the agreement within more or less 2 years. The basic principle, and the President has already said it, is citizens first. And when we talk about citizens, it's citizens in Britain and it's citizens in the European Union. For us, it's an absolute priority that the rights of these citizens is settled. And we think even that it needs to be the first point, the first issue to be tackled in the negotiations. So we want that these negotiations start with the rights of the residents, the UK residents living in Europe and the EU residents living in Britain, because we don't think, and we are completely against the fact that citizens should become bargaining chips in a negotiation. And full protection on both sides is absolutely needed in accordance with the European law and with the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And it's also in the same spirit that we want that the EU27 examine how to mitigate the negative effect for those British people who are losing their European citizenship, a solution that has to be naturally in full line with the primary law of the European Union. The second point that we make clear in this opinion of the Parliament that is tabled for next week is that we hope for fair and constructive negotiations. That means no behind our back. And for example, we make very clear in our resolution that we will never accept, for example, that behind our back the UK is starting trade negotiations with other countries before the withdrawal. Because until the withdrawal, the UK is a full member of the European Union with all the rights, but also with all the obligations. And the same goes, in fact, also for the individual member states of the European Union, who could be, I should say, tempted to negotiate separate agreements with the UK. For us, for the European Parliament, the unity of the 27 is vital. And the best way to achieve this is to take on board in the negotiation mandate of the Union all the interests of the 27 member states of the Union, especially of the Republic of Ireland. Because we recognise as Parliament that there is a special threat on Ireland and also on Northern Ireland, and that new unrest in Northern Ireland has absolutely to be avoided. And therefore, we are very clear. The Brexit agreement needs to fully respect the Good Friday Agreement in all its aspects, and that means also that we will never accept a hard border again between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. We want also, in our very clear resolution, a financial settlement. And we expect from the UK that in this financial settlement they honour all their legal, financial and budgetary obligations. And next point, naturally, is the future relationship with Britain. In the European Parliament, and I hope that it will be backed by a huge majority, we still think that the best solution for the UK, for its citizens and for its companies, was to remain part of the single market, was to remain at least part of the customs union. But unfortunately, this is not the way the UK sees it, as it does not accept the four freedoms and as it wants to negotiate its own trade agreements. From our side, nevertheless, we want to make clear that sectoral agreements cutting up the single market, in fact destroying the single market, won't be allowed. We are of the opinion that the best way for a future close partnership between the Union and the UK is an association agreement based on Article 217 of the treaty. And I give you a short, I will not read it completely, what 217 is saying. The Union may conclude with one or more third countries agreements establishing association involving reciprocal rights and obligation, common action and special procedure. We think that such an association agreement goes naturally well beyond economic cooperation. It's also about, for example, cooperation on security or implementing programs like, for example, Erasmus, and in which case, naturally, the UK has to meet European standards and also to pay the normal contributions. But what we shall never accept is that there is a trade-off between the one and the other. Saying, oh, we can do a good agreement on security, internal and external, there is also a deal that we want on trade and economics. I think that the security of our citizens is far too important to start a trade-off from one for the other. And in our point of view, both are absolutely necessary in the future partnership without starting to bargain on this, the one against the other. We don't exclude also a transition period that in our point of view need to be limited in time. And we propose 3 years. And then finally, I want to remind you that the Parliament needs to sign off this final agreement or agreements. The withdrawal agreement, the future partnership, eventually the transition. And what we're going to do as Parliament is to do everything to minimize the negative effects for citizens and businesses of these different agreements. And as the President of our House, Mr. Tajani, has indicated, naturally it will never be the same. It will never be outside the Union better than inside the Union. And that is not a question of revenge. That is not a question of punishment. That is the logic of the European Union, of the European treaties, of the European project, that together we created an added value for everybody of our countries and for every of our citizens. Naturally, the Parliament will later on come with more detailed resolutions on specific issues in the coming months. And normally that will start after the summer break when, I should say, the negotiations between the European Union and the UK are really on speed, if I may use that expression.
Thank you. The President and Mr. Verhofstadt will take now a few questions. Enrique.
Muchas gracias. Enrique Serveto, del diario ABC de Madrid. Una pregunta en español.
From ABC in Madrid to President Tajani. There have been information that says in the resolution you talked about having a reversibility clause. That's to say, to leave the door open in case the United Kingdom changes its opinion. What do you think about that?
Reglas son muy claras.
The rules are very clear, says the President. First of all, the decision is taken by the country concerned, and the United Kingdom decided to leave the European Union. Mrs. May did this formally this morning through a letter which was addressed to the President of the European Council, Mr. Tusk. So since 1:20 p.m, the Brexit issue has become an issue for the whole of the European Union. If the United Kingdom were to decide to change its position, it can't do it by itself. All the member states of the EU would have to decide whether this is possible. But all the member states, I stress the word all. So it could be done, but the rules under which it is to be done or were to be done are very clear.
Yes, just two questions, please. President Tajani,
Not too difficult.
wonder if you could address this question. That in her letter, Theresa May said that in security terms, a failure to reach agreement would mean our cooperation in the fight against crime and terrorism would be weakened. She was talking about a broad agreement, but also an overall agreement. Some have seen that as an attempt to link the two. Some have read it as a possible threat. What do you see? How do you see that, and what impact do you think that has? Mr. Verhofstadt, do you think that that the question of a future trade agreement has to be kept till later? There cannot be discussions to start on that early on.
I want to be very clear on this. We want a good agreement with the UK. The UK, after the Brexit, will be a friend. As I said yesterday, after the meeting with the Mayor of London, and I said also during my speech, tomorrow the UK will be outside the European Union, but the UK is a European country. For this, I hope a good agreement on everything. But I think the close cooperation on defense, police, intelligence, action against terrorism, and judicial matters should continue with the UK, whether there is deal or not. For us, the cooperation against terrorism, against crime, is a priority. For this, I think, I hope a global agreement after the Brexit with the UK. I think during these 2 years, we need to pave the way for a good agreement between us and the UK. But also, if it's impossible, I am optimistic on this. Also, Mrs. May, in his letter, is optimistic on this. But in case of negative solution, for us, the cooperation against terrorism is crucial. Against crime, our cooperation is crucial because it's not a problem European Union inside or outside. The terrorism is the problem today, number one. You know very much the situation in London after this attack. We want to support, we want to back the United Kingdom against the terrorism, as the United Kingdom supported France, Belgium, after the attack. For this, I think, in my opinion, this is important to achieve. First of all, this agreement is impossible. In my opinion, it's possible to split. But in case a negative solution on trade, we need to cooperate against terrorism, against crime.
There is an article in the resolution, 23, was clearly indicating that we don't want a trade-off between, on the one hand, economic policies, agreements on the one hand, and internal and external security. That's what already indicating in my intervention, saying that security is far too important that to start to bargaining it against an economic agreement. On the other question that you have put forward, the resolution gives a sequencing of the negotiations as we see it. And that starts with a withdrawal agreement in the light of your future relationship between the Union and the UK. So what is needed in this framework of 2 years is the withdrawal agreement, plus also an agreement on the general terms, I should say, of your future relationship. That's exactly what the treaty says in Article 50. And that needs to be done. The further detailing of this new partnership, of this what we call association agreement based on Article 217, because that is the idea that we propose, will take certainly the whole transition period. Because that seems to me a little bit unrealistic to think that you can do that in 14 or 15 months. So we have simply to apply the treaty. The treaty gives the answer to the question that you have put forward, but we have in the resolution in 13, 14 and 15 clearly indicating how this sequencing will go on.
Thank you. Rob.
Rob Heerbout voor VRT in het Nederlands. Vraag voor meneer Verhofstadt, als dat mag.
I have a question for Mr. Verhofstadt in Dutch. It has been said that there is no turning back. Would you agree? Or could Article 50 be backtracked? Another question, do you really believe it would be possible within 2 years to reach agreement on the divorce and the future trade relationship? If you focus on the divorce on the one hand and on the other hand look at the general framework for the new relationship, then it would be possible. As for the details for that new relationship or partnership, of course, that would require more than 2 years. That is why we are saying that the focus must be restricted to a 3-year period for the new relationship to be determined. As for backtracking on Article 50, in our resolution, we recognise that a change of heart is possible, but as the President has already pointed out, this would require the agreement of the other 27 member states, because it would no longer be a unilateral process. Once Article 50 has been notified, then the United Kingdom and all other member states of the European Union are involved. We would not like backtracking of Article 50 to be used as a ploy to gain more time or secure new advantages for membership. So there would be 2 parties involved.
Speak in Italian. Una domanda al Presidente.
Question to President Tajani. In the resolution, you have fairly stringent terms for the negotiations. If I understand correctly, you're actually even willing to use your veto to block the agreement if these are not complied with. Is that true? Reply, yes. The European Parliament will be crucially important in this process because at the end of the negotiations, it will have to give its assent, yes or no. I hope at the end we can vote yes, but let me be clear. All of us have a priority, and that is to protect the interests of our citizens, citizens of the European Union, living in the European Union, but also European Union citizens living in the United Kingdom. That's our priority. Also, of course, there are also the subjects of Her Britannic Majesty, but we think that Ms. May's letter is a step in the right direction, so I do hope that the result will be positive. But for us, the priority is the protection of the freedoms of all the 4 freedoms enjoyed by European citizens. Thank you.
Joanna Ostein, Radio France, RFI.
Radio France, RFI. A question in French, please, for Mr. Tajani and Mr. Verhofstadt. As regards the negotiations team and the people responsible for leading negotiations, we have Mr. Barnier. But is he equipped for this job? Is he sufficiently well surrounded by other staff? And what kind of advice would you offer to him to take these through successfully, these negotiations? I know Mr. Barnier very well. We were commissioners together, and we worked very closely together on a number of dossiers. And I think he will be a very good negotiator. He's a very capable man. He's already worked a great deal on this dossier, and I think he has an excellent team, and the European Parliament is going to provide civil servants who will be able to assist Mr. Barnier, and of course then the European Parliament will also be doing everything possible to be able to give him ideas and stances, seeking always to defend the European citizens. And we've also invited him to the debate that we'll be holding next Wednesday in Strasbourg. So there we will have a debate with the group leaders, because they are the key protagonists in the European Parliament, but also we'll have the opportunity to tell Mr. Barnier that he will be our negotiator as well. So we have Mr. Verhofstadt here, who's coordinating the work through the Conference of Presidents to be done on Brexit, but we also will always have contact with him, but we will be supporting the work that he does, because we think he is very capable, he has a great deal of experience, he's been a minister, and he also knows very well the territory here in terms of European citizens. He was Commissioner for the Internal Market, and then later on he got experience in the areas of finance, because he oversaw a number of reforms when he was a commissioner as well. So I think he's very capable, and he has certainly all of our support. Yes, the answer is yes from my part. And that is also reflected in the text as well. We have a specific article on this which says that we are, as Parliament, supporting the choice of Mr. Barnier, and stating the fact that he will be fully supported by the Parliament.
Carl Dinnan from ITV News. You have said that you want, the question for both of you, if you don't mind. You have said that you want to have the negotiations for the withdrawal followed by the negotiations for the future trading arrangements. How do you expect Mrs. May to sell to the British Parliament and the British people a possible bill for leaving the European Union when they have no idea what the future relationship will be like?
That is not what I said. That's not what I said. Sorry, I said the withdrawal agreement in the light of an agreement on your future relationship. That's in the treaty. So you're going to not have the details of your future relationship, but at least a common idea of what will be your future relationship. That's exactly what is in the treaty.
It's correct. I support the Verhofstadt position. The problem is not Verhofstadt position; it's the treaty position.
Yeah,
For this, it's not our decision. But okay, we need to decide the divorce, and then after the framework, we need to pave the way for the future relations after the day after the Brexit. But as we said, we are in favour of good relations with the UK. We are not against the UK. We are friends, but now we need to strengthen our interest during the Brexit, but working for the future for good relations in many, many sectors with the UK. But to be member of the European Union is not the same to be outside of the European Union. This is very clear.
Voilà, deux dernières questions. Jurek.
Two final questions.
Jurek Kuczkiewicz, newspaper Le Soir.
From Le Soir.
So, since this is a very British day, a question about the role of the Parliament in the negotiation. An eminent member of the Parliament, Mr. Weber, said that actually the Parliament will be the bad guy in the negotiation because there always must be a bad guy. So, Mr. Verhofstadt, there was a book written about you with the title "The Good Guy." So, how do you see, more seriously, how do you see this bad guy role for the Parliament? And a second question about the transparency. When you mention transparency, is it transparency of the negotiation team, Mr. Barnier, to the Parliament, or transparency also to the public? And how do you see this precisely, this transparency? Thank you.
J'ai pas compris. Le méchant est Verhofstadt. C'est pas qui est le méchant, les parents?
I'm not sure who the baddie here is. Is it Verhofstadt?
No, there was a...
Just joking.
J'ai bien compris.
Understood. We are doing our work. We are championing the interests of European citizens. The largest groups in this House have set that out in the text presented today at the Conference of Presidents when discussing this topic. That draft resolution is a text in support of citizens. We don't have baddies or goodies. We are defending the interests of citizens, and if that means we have to take a tough stance, we will do so, but that is our aim. If we can do so without playing the part of baddies, we'll do so. That's our job as the European Parliament. We're here to defend the interests of citizens. I hope we can do so politely, gracefully, and in as pleasant and nice a fashion as possible. On transparency, yes, negotiators must be transparent with Parliament, but Parliament must also be transparent with the general public. That is why we will organise different debates and adopt resolutions on more detailed issues than the cross-cutting matters that you find in this first draft resolution. I would also extend greetings to the chair of the Conference of Committee Chairs. She will be very much involved and help to secure a strong position. We're all working together. We as MEPs are working to defend the interests of citizens. I would echo what Mr. Verhofstadt has said. Transparency will be key. We will have transparent debate. We want to know what is happening and we won't be hiding anything.
Question first for Mr. Verhofstadt. You were uncharacteristically sort of kind, I think, to Theresa May by describing her linkage of anti-terrorism, crime cooperation, security as calling it a trade-off. Another word that perhaps might be better used is blackmail. I mean, that's a kind of trade-off too. Isn't she trying to blackmail you? Mr. Tajani, in the resolution, certainly the version I saw in paragraph 17, it said that a future withdrawal agreement, the competent authority for interpreting it and enforcing it would be the European Court of Justice. Surely if you have a withdrawal agreement, that means that the ECJ, certainly in the UK jurisdiction, will not be able to interpret or enforce it. So could you explain that, please?
But for the UK position, we need to speak with Mrs. May, not with us. But we need to be clear. The United Kingdom is a member of the European Union. The Court of Justice is an institution of the European Union. From today to the Brexit, London is the capital of the member state. And for this, we need to respect the rules. It's not my decision or the Verhofstadt decision or the European Parliament decision, it's the treaty. And the United Kingdom signed the treaty. This is very simple and very clear.
Yeah, certainly that the withdrawal agreement is an act of union law. And an act of union law is naturally controlled by the European Court of Justice. It's so simple as that. So this withdrawal agreement is nothing outside the treaty. It's an act of union law inside the treaty. So automatically the Court of Justice is competent. And on the second thing, I try to be a gentleman. So towards a lady, I don't even use or think about the word blackmail.
Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.